Have you ever noticed two homes hit the market the same week, same neighborhood, same price, and the same square footage, but one sells instantly and the other just sits and collects dust? Usually there's a reason, and it's not some mysterious right buyer that we're waiting for. It's something you can identify and fix. If your house checks all the boxes, it's clean, it's listed properly, it's got good photos, good access for showings, and it's still not selling, then it's more than likely one of these three things. Yes, the market plays a role. Interest rates, affordability, both of those things matter, but that affects everyone. It doesn't explain why your house isn't sold, but 3 down the street sold no problem. Some sellers sit tight thinking the next Bank of Canada rate drop is going to magically solve their problem and make their house worth $15,000 more. It won't. And one I hear all the time. We are waiting for the right buyer to show up who appreciates what we have. This idea of the right buyer is a fantasy. The real buyers are already shopping and they've passed on your listing. Now we're gonna cover a lot here, so if you don't have time, just shoot me a text at 780-819-5508 and I can give you the straight goods. Just say, hey Trevor, I'm thinking about selling my home. Can you tell me exactly what to do? Send me your address and I'll take it from there. All right, let's get into it. Here's what's really going on when homes just sit. Reason number 1, price. The real culprit most of the time. Let's be honest, 9 times out of 10, if your home isn't selling, it's the price that's the problem. You can dress it up however you want, but in the end, the market tells the truth. Now that doesn't mean you priced it wrong on purpose. Sometimes there's just things about your property that make it difficult to pin down the right number. For that, I wanna go into basically a list of kind of hard to value factors. Here's where the nuance comes in. Now this doesn't cover absolutely everything, but it covers a good chunk of them. So maybe your house backs onto a busy road instead of other homes. That's gonna make you take a hit on price, but how big of one? Is it 20 grand? Is it 30? It honestly depends on the neighborhood, how big the road is, how noisy it is, what else there is to choose from. Or maybe your house backs onto a ravine. That's great, but how much is that worth? It's not always easy to say, especially if we don't have another good comp that had the exact same ravine view as yours. Weird layouts, like a 3-level split or a funky addition that shrinks the basement. So sometimes if you have an addition that was put onto the house, most of the time they don't also put another basement under that section. So you'll end up with a bit of an inflated square footage advertised, and then people go and look at it and then they notice, oh, the basement's actually smaller than I expected. So that's something that can be difficult to value as well. They can also confuse buyers if you have a weird layout. The weirder the layout, the smaller your buyer pool at the end of the day. Odd yards, small lots, or strange shapes can quietly kill value too, and unique finishes. So like if you've got a bright pink kitchen, you might love it, but 90% of buyers will not love it. It's not worth 0, but it's probably worth less than you think. Infills in an older neighborhood with no other infills. So that's gonna be hard to comp. You're basically pioneering the price. We might have to try to pull infill comps from other somewhat similar neighborhoods if you're the only one on the block or the only one in that entire neighborhood. That's something that can also make it hard to pin down a number. Partially finished basements, I will say that most buyers treat those as an unfinished basement. So whatever money you put into it there, you probably won't see it back. Keep in mind, most buyers are not experienced contractors and home renovators. So when they walk into a basement and they see, okay, it's framed and the bathroom's half put together, the roof's not in, the floor's not in, or it still needs some electrical, or it still needs some plumbing, like all those things are very overwhelming for buyers. So they're just gonna look at it as a big mess that they don't really know how to solve. And so they're not gonna start being like, okay, well, let me give them half the value of a finished basement because they've already done about half the job. Like that's just not how buyers think. So keep that in mind. Unfinished projects, whether it's a basement or other things, are going to make you take a hit on price. You probably shouldn't really be giving them too much value generally when you're pricing out your home. Biggest or smallest house on the block, both can be tricky. The price per square foot math breaks down when you not really fit what's in the rest of the neighborhood. So for example, usually the smaller properties, since they're generally going to be a bit more affordable, will often have a higher price per square foot than bigger properties. So if you're in a neighborhood and it's only 2,000 square foot houses and somehow you're in there with a 1,200 square foot house, the price per square foot number, if you're looking at that, would probably skew your results. Probably would have been better to describe that the other way around. If everything's 1,200 square foot and yours is 2,000 and you start looking at, oh, well, these homes are selling for X amount per square foot, that might actually make you come up with a higher number for your property than you probably should have used. And repairs. If the roof is shot, a 10K roof doesn't mean that it's just as simple as taking 10K off the price and call it good. That's a good place to start. You'd be surprised how many people don't want to do any deductions on value for things like that. But buyers typically are going to want a discount plus compensation for the hassle. They're not going to do you a favor by fixing your problems at the end of the day. And that's also just going to shrink your buyer pool a lot because so many of the buyers don't have the capital for things like that. But if for whatever reason you're not able to, or you don't have the time to do some of those needed repairs on your property, like a roof that needs to be done in the next year, that's something that you should be expecting to have a pretty big impact on the price you can get for your property. Just to kind of summarize this concept, all of these examples I just listed, they all shrink the buyer pool. And the smaller the buyer pool that you have, the more aggressive that you have to be on price. And that's the part that sellers hate to hear, but it is the truth. Let's talk about strategy, pricing into the market versus chasing the market. When prices are sliding even a little, you never want to be the one chasing the market down. The house that's 5 grand too high today ends up being 15 grand too high a month from now. You've got 3 ways to price. Basically, you can price it what we would probably consider below market. We would call that event pricing because it's going to create an event when you post something that actually looks immediately like it's a good deal. It looks like a deal, it drives lots of traffic, you're going to get a ton of showings really quickly, and those homes often sell over asking price. Next pricing strategy would be at market value, or what we think is market value. Obviously, it's not an exact science, but if you're really just trying to price it right where you think it should be and where it should reasonably sell, that's going to be fine for you. Fine strategy if your home's clean and it shows well. These houses also tend to move pretty quickly. They can also go over list price if there's enough people jumping on it and there's not enough other inventory, but that's a good strategy if you just want to not take the risk that maybe there's not enough buyers. If you went with the event pricing strategy, when you're just hitting it right on the nose, it's going to look reasonable right away. You're still going to get lots of action and you shouldn't have to do any crazy price reductions. The next strategy would be above market. This is a more traditional approach. You're buying time, and unfortunately time can kill listings. So if you overshoot it, you're leaving a lot of room for negotiation. If you got it wrong, and especially if the market's shifting, that's where you can get into that sort of chasing the market down scenario. So it's usually my least preferred method, but it is the default that a lot of people go to because everybody always wants to try to get more. But counterintuitively, in my experience, it seems like the way that ends up getting people more is actually the below market event pricing strategy. Because when you do that, you get so much excitement on the property and now their emotions are getting involved. And if they don't want to lose the property, instead of them having that conversation of being like, hey, I wonder if we could get them to come 5,000 down or 10,000 down. Now, if they know there's multiple offers, as soon as the first one and second one comes in, they know they're competing. They know they have to put their best foot forward. And so instead of trying to nickel and dime you, the question they're really asking themselves is, how much is this house really worth to me? How much am I willing to pay to make sure I don't lose this house? And that is a completely different psychology than when somebody's trying to see how good of a deal they can get. There's gonna be some people that don't want to participate with that, and that's all fine, but a lot of them, they're very attracted to the property because you priced it so reasonably right from the get-go, and maybe all your competition didn't price it like that, and it gets people excited. Fix it or price for it. If something about your house is off, so let's say there's a weird color, a bad yard, missing updates that would be quite common or expected, you can either fix that or you can price for it. You can't really pretend it doesn't matter though. That's not an option. So the market's already doing the math for you, whether you want to believe that or not, but that's generally the two options that you have. Like let's say the roof example we talked about before. It's not like you absolutely have to fix the roof if you want to sell your property, but if you don't fix the roof, you're going to have to price properly for it. You're going to have to take a hit on the price for that. Or if you do fix the roof now, instead of trying to adjust for price to fix that problem, you're actually just fixing the problem. So those are kind of your options with a lot of things, and you have to weigh the benefits of some of them. So some of them are going to be bigger deal killers than others. The painting thing, that makes a huge difference, but I think we can all recognize that if you're living in the property, it's seller occupied, you're living in there, it's not exactly easy to paint an entire house while you're still living in it. So that's one of the ones where it's like, okay, the walls are beat up, it hasn't been painted in 15 years. Maybe you're just gonna price for that and keep that in mind. Don't price it as if it just been freshly painted when it hasn't. That's what I mean by fix it or price for it. Once you've got the price right, or at least least it's realistic. The next thing that separates the fast sellers from the sitters is how the home feels when people walk into it. So let's talk about reason number 2, presentation, how hard you're actually trying. Buyers don't buy logic, they buy feeling. You can tell yourself they'll see past the mess, but the reality is most people can't. They're reacting to how your place feels, not running math equations in their heads at the end of the day. Like some of them, they do start running math equations, but that's usually after they start being like, oh man, that's expensive. I gotta fix this, this, and that. But the emotional appeal, that piece is not based on math. That feeling is gonna form for most people in the first few seconds when they're looking at it online or when they're actually in person. Light, the space, the smell, those 3 do more heavy lifting than a lot of people realize. And I wanna dig deeper into the smell factor and where I see a lot of sellers going wrong with this. So let's talk about smell. So because this one's sneaky, a lot of sellers often think, I'll make it smell nice. And then they go nuts with things like diffusers, the plug-in air fresheners. Sometimes people even try to use incense, even though they didn't actually use that in their lifestyle. And if you combine that with a bit of pet smell, bam, it's gonna be stuffy, overwhelming, sometimes even gross. In my opinion, you're actually better off removing smells entirely instead of adding new ones. Keep that in mind. This is a very old piece of advice about making your place smell nice that's been around for a long time. I think the absence of smell is actually your best strategy most of the time. A clean, neutral smell is good. That's the goal if you really want to do something. The one thing I actually don't mind that doesn't seem to have any negative effects from my perspective is the really old school thing of just baking a batch of cookies. So then there's going to be a faint sweet smell, a sweet note in the air, but definitely skip the air fresheners and essential oils. You're not selling a spa. I can think of one house that I went into where they had pets and then they had diffusers on like every floor, and it just made the whole house feel really stuffy to me. Maybe for that particular person, it'd feel like home to them or whatever, but it definitely did not to me. It actually made me feel like this house is basically a health hazard. Like that, that's how I felt. And maybe that's a bit of an extreme. It's not like it's a hard problem to fix, but some of your buyers, that's gonna be their reaction. Whereas if there's no smells at all, it's clean, that's great. Now you can please everyone. They can imagine adding their own essential oils later if they want to, right? One last thing about this. If the house has been smoked in, that's actually a serious problem. Smoke gets into absolutely everything. It gets into the drywall, the carpets, the vents, and painting over it just traps the stink under the paint and adds paint fumes, essentially. So sometimes people get the impression that you just paint it and all of a sudden that fixes it. The only real fix is some type of remediation. If there's carpet, that's removing the carpets. If you're gonna keep the existing drywall, you've got to seal it with something like Kilz primer. Don't skip and just go to paint and think that does it. Like you actually need to seal it in properly. So one of the brands is like, I think it's called Kilz. So you seal it with that before you repaint with that proper primer. Otherwise, you're gonna take a big hit on price. Even other smokers will probably expect a deal. Things like ozone treatment can also kind of help band-aid the issue, but unless you've done that sort of remediation, that's going to have an impact. You might not be able to solve that problem, but that goes back to the first reason, and that's price. Like, so if you're not fixing it, then you got a price for it. And that's one that is gonna shrink your buyer pool a lot. There's gonna be a whole bunch of people that look at it as a health issue. They're just not gonna be interested at all. Other people will be like, oh, okay, this is something that maybe I can fix myself, but then they're gonna want a good deal. So keep that in mind. It's a little hard to price for that, but you should be going substantially lower than comps that are, you know, the same, except they're not full of smoke, essentially. Let's go into why clean and decluttered actually matters. So when a home's cluttered or dirty, buyers make assumptions. Something like it's been neglected, that it's smaller than it really is if it's quite cluttered, or just that it'll be work. They feel like it's gonna be a lot of work because they don't like the way it is right now. Most of the time they don't consciously say that, but it is what they feel. You and I might know that cleaning it up would change the whole impression, but most buyers, I find, they can't really mentally strip out the clutter and imagine, you know, a beautiful property that they can just move into. They're gonna move on if they don't have that kind of vision and they're looking for something that's more turnkey. On the flip side, if you walk into a clean, bright, well-decorated space, even if it's it's modest, it doesn't need to be like professionally decorated or staged, people are gonna start saying things like, can we buy the furniture? Or, oh, I just love the vibe. And that's the emotion doing the selling. I've actually had multiple times over the years where I've got a buyer client that liked the way the seller presented the house so much, like with their living room, their dining room, the bedrooms, where they actually want to like copy what they did. And they sometimes get into, I wonder if the furniture is for sale. Most of the time it's not. I'm not saying you have to sell your furniture, but this is a good result to have with a buyer. They literally want to keep it the way you have it, right? They're not talking about changing things and it's not going to be work anymore. Now it's like, oh, I want to keep it exactly the way it is right now. This is awesome. So where's the sweet spot for most sellers? I would say that not every home needs a full staging crew. If it's vacant and you've got the budget, sure, it does help. But for most people, when you're still living in the space, the sweet spot is gonna be pretty simple, and that's to get it clean, move stuff out, and open up the space. I've personally got a bit of a love-hate relationship with professional staging. It does work, but it's pricey, and most families don't really want to live in a house that's full of rented furniture. The real win most of the time, if you're going to be occupying the house while you're selling it, is removing friction, not trying to create a showroom. It is different if it's vacant though. That's when sometimes it's worth considering doing staging because you've already taken everything out. Now, okay, maybe we do want to bring some stuff in. We want to add some excitement and help people feel a little bit more at home here, but you got to work with what you got. Let's talk about cleanliness. If you can't get it to a 9 out of 10 on cleanliness yourself, just pay someone. Pay someone a few $100 to do it. I do think it's worth it. Sellers might think that they're saving money by skipping out on that or just assuming that it's not really going to be a problem, but I would say in those cases, it sometimes ends up costing you thousands of dollars. If you're too busy, hire a cleaner. You can even get them to come weekly after it's listed. Just get it a really good clean before you list it. And then once it's listed, get them to come every week. It's not that expensive, especially if you're only talking about doing it for a short period of time, just to help keep it clean, help it show its best. And it's going to be a lot cheaper than a big price drop if people feel like the house is not clean. Cleanliness can make a big impact. And keep in mind, like everybody has a different standard of clean, right? Like some people, they'll consider a house like dirty unless like it feels like it's been deep cleaned at all times, right? Then there's other people that they think their house is clean and other people might consider that a 5 out of 10, right? Like, so there's a pretty wide spectrum for that. So you're better off on going way more towards the having it super clean. And if you're not the type to keep stuff super clean yourself, bring in the professionals, right? If you can't make it present well, again, you can always fix the problem with price, but don't pretend it doesn't matter. Buyers pay for feeling, and presentation is what is going to create that feeling. All right, so if you're watching this and you're thinking, this is exactly some of the stuff that I don't want to happen when I list my place, just call or text me. I'll walk you through what to focus on so that your home actually gets the right attention from day one. So you don't need to figure it out all alone. That's literally what I do every day. You can reach me at 780-819-5508. Shoot me a text or go to booktrevornow.com. You can just select a time on my calendar, 30 minutes. We'll hop on a call, no pressure. We can just talk and go from there. Okay, let's get into reason number 3, exposure, making sure people actually see it. Let's be real. The whole "we put your home on thousands of websites" line that maybe you've heard, I kind of consider that total fluff. Like nobody really knows what that even means anymore, right? It's just an MLS feed. So when there's a property on the MLS feed, it's automatically pushed to like a whole bunch of sites that are signed up for that feed essentially. So, you know, bragging about how many websites it's on is kind of like bragging your car comes with 4 tires. It doesn't really matter anymore, okay? It's the default. Most serious buyers, they're either working with a real estate agent who's sending them listings directly. They got them kind of like set up on the back end feed. We've put in their criteria. We know exactly what they're looking for. 2-bedroom townhouse in this area with a garage and in this price range. We've got them set up. They're getting like email updates from us whenever something hits that, right? So those are the super serious people. They're working with an agent, or they're usually checking 1 or 2 websites, often realtor.ca. There's a few other ones that are pretty popular, or it could be some obscure one that they happen to sign up for that you don't even know about, but it's the same thing. It's the same MLS listing essentially, just on a different website. So it's not like every single person scouring like 1,200 different websites trying to look at all the listings. Sometimes people are desperately trying to see if they can find more options when they're struggling, but eventually they'll come to the conclusion that like, okay, All the sites have the same listings. If they're on the MLS, it's on all the sites. Exposure isn't about how many sites your listing shows up on. It's about how it looks when it does. That means high quality photos, a solid virtual tour, and floor plans. That's the baseline, at least for me. There are a lot of listings that skip those, especially the cheaper ones. I don't. Even my $150,000 condo listings, I get the same treatment. I always have the professional photos, I always have the floor plans and the virtual tour. You get all that. The virtual tour, that's kind of like the Google Street View that allows you to see everything kind of in 3D. You can even take measurements and stuff on it in addition to the floor plans. I think that should be the standard, but it's not a standard, right? And people can do whatever they want, but that's kind of my minimum bar on what I like to do from an exposure perspective to make sure we're really making it super clear what people are getting. They've got professional photos, they can clearly see everything. The virtual tour fills any gaps in, and then the floor plans, those have become very popular now. That really helps people visualize things as well. Then there's kind of my secret weapon, which is the long form video. That's kind of my personal differentiator for exposure. You're watching this on YouTube right now, so you probably get it already. But when people are browsing listings on YouTube, I find that they're serious, or at least a lot more serious than just any random person looking at real estate on the website. They want to see the whole house, I find, and not just scroll past a few photos. So when I have the time and notice, I like to do a full video walkthrough tour for most of my listings. So that's me showing the home room by room. This does take more prep. I've got to film, edit, publish. It's not quite as fast as just a photo turnaround, but I do find that it pays off. And on average, people watch 30 to 50% of these videos. And these videos can be anywhere from like 5 minutes to 15 minutes, you know, depending on the house and how in depth I go. I think that's massive engagement and exposure compared to someone that's just flipping through a website and looking at photos for like, you know, 10 seconds or less before they move on to the next one. Somebody comes and watches 2.5 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of a video tour of your house. That's giving you incredibly good exposure. I don't usually just post those. Like I do run YouTube ads a lot of the time. So your home would get blasted in front of the right people in a very short period of time when you're first listing it. So that can be thousands of potential buyers in that first crucial week when your home hits the market. It's not really about going viral, but I do find that it's about getting noticed quickly by the people who actually matter. There's a bit of a hack with this as well, is it allows me to kind of control the story and the way that the house is being presented. And this is something that maybe most sellers don't realize, but 80% or more of the showings that happen on your listing are gonna be from buyers that are working with another real estate agent. So when they're doing that, you know, they book the showing with their agent through me, they have their own private showing. After that, I've got absolutely no control over what that agent says about your house. But with a long form video tour, I do. I can present your home the way it deserves to be presented or the way I want to. I can highlight what matters. I can explain the context. I can tell a story about your house directly to buyers, even if they're working with another agent, because on the MLS, I can link directly to that full length video tour with the virtual tour link. I like to use that for my video tour so that I'm getting people, even if they're working with another agent, they can click through to that when they get their email update from their agent with the listing that fits their criteria. It's still linked directly in there. So now it kind of gives me a shortcut way to talk directly to them versus what I'm allowed to put in the listing itself. Like the description is like 1,048 characters. So there's not very much being put in that. And then also the photos, of course, which do a lot of heavy lifting, but photos could only say so much. The video gives me a way to actually walk buyers through it, almost like I'm showing them the house myself in person. That's obviously the best case scenario. But like I said, only 80 to 90% of the buyers that are coming through are working with another agent. So this gives me a way to actually have direct influence on them. Let's talk about kind of like a visibility diagnosis and what some of the different things that are happening could be telling you. So here's the diagnostic part. If your home's listed and you're not getting any showings, like 0, that's almost never a visibility problem unless you completely botched everything else that we talked about. So the photos are botched or you left out key details. Sometimes I've seen things where things got listed wrong and it's like a 3-bedroom house that they put as a 2-bedroom. So there's things like that that could affect your exposure. But if you've done all those other things right, then generally that's going to be a pricing problem. And you're probably off by more than 20 grand depending on what price range that you're in. If like it's everywhere, it's accessible, you got everything right and nobody's showing up, then that's because everybody thinks it's overpriced. It's a bit different if you're in the apartment condo market, but we won't get into that right now. So if you're getting views online, but nobody's booking showings, it's usually going to be that the listing looks great in the photos, but something turns buyers off when they dig a little bit deeper. Could be the layout, could be the yard, location, or wear and tear. If that's obvious, even from the pictures, you'll find out right away. Or the price just doesn't line up with what they're seeing once they start start comparing to other properties, because buyers are doing a lot of comparing. They're not stupid. Like, everybody knows how to shop. We're all buying stuff constantly all the time, whether it's online or off. So people want to feel like they're getting a fair deal. And if it's not checking all the boxes when they look at your property online, they're not even gonna book a showing most of the time. The next kind of thing here is if you're getting lots of showings but no offers, that's when you look for patterns in the feedback. Sometimes it's the same comment that's popping up over and over again. Like, let's say people are like, oh, the layout's weird, or oh, that road out back really ruins things. Or it could be something that wasn't obvious from the photos. At that point, it goes back to what I said earlier. You either fix it or you price for it. So a lot of those things you can't fix, but you can't pretend that this stuff doesn't matter. And that's how you could end up just sitting on the market for a long time. One more thing I like to do in my listings is don't hide all the negatives. Sometimes agents or owners, they try to crop out the power lines that are like right in the backyard. If they're like right there, you got like mega power lines that are right behind you, and then you've purposely made sure the only angles on your listing don't show that, all that does is kind of waste everybody's time. Now you're gonna get a bunch of people that are interested in the property at a price that they thought was for a house with no big power lines right behind the house, and now they're gonna show up, and then you're gonna hear that over and over again. Oh, the power lines, oh, the power lines. And then, you know, you're just wasting time doing a bunch of showings for no reason. I like to be honest about what the property is. Even if the house needs a complete gut job reno, you can play on that, right? Like it's the right house for somebody that's looking for something like that. You don't try to make it sound like it's amazing, right? I've even seen stuff like where a house needs a reno and the description describes it as like gleaming floors and stuff like that, and it just totally doesn't fit reality. The right buyer, in my opinion, can handle the truth. They just don't like surprises. They want it to fit what they were expecting. Yes, exposure matters, but not in the way a lot of people think. And it's not about having your home on every website on earth. It's more about how good it looks and if you've given everybody the information and the visuals that they need. That's how it's presented, and basically how quickly it reaches the right people if it's in the right places. If you do that right, buyers don't just see your listing, they're gonna feel it and they're gonna want to come take a look. Another thing, there is the agent factor. Sometimes the issue isn't the house, it can be the approach. If an agent's having a hard time having the blunt conversations with their client or with you on adjusting strategy, that can be a problem. My clients know that I'll tell them the uncomfortable truth because the market, it already is determining what your home's gonna go for, and I'd rather tell you that first. Every listing kind of tells a story on how it's packaged. There's price, there's the presentation, the exposure. We've talked about those three things. If your home isn't selling, it's almost always gonna be one of those three things or a mix. The good news, every one of those is fixable one way or another, but if you're just pretending it's bad luck, that's not gonna fix your problem and your house is gonna sit. So yeah, every listing comes down to price, presentation, and exposure. If you get those right, you're gonna sell. If you're planning on putting your home on the market and you wanna make sure that you've nailed those three things, call or text me at 780-819-5508, and I'll walk you through exactly what to do to get it ready step by step. I hope you guys got value out of this video. It might have been a long one, but I tried to pack in as much value as possible. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.